Hey everybody, Pete A. Turner coming at you here, asking you to check out my technology podcast called Popping the Bubble. There's no E on the end of bubble, B-U-B-B-L. Sandra Ponce de Leon and I, we get in and we demystify what's going on in the Silicon Valley. You want to know where we're headed? Come check us out.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Nate Boyer.
This is Hilliard Guest.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Rob Bell.
This is J.R. Robinson.
This is Dan Stone.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, I'm Mark Valley.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hi, this is Alex Winn from 2 Foot Titan. You're listening to the Break It Down Show.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero, Mark Valley, and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, this is great. One of the benefits of having a podcast is that I control who's on the show, and sometimes I can have my cousin on the show. So I'm in Missoula, Montana, and I'm at my aunt and uncle's house, and I'm sitting with my cousin, Alex, who can sing and he can play songs, and he can write music, and he's in a band called 2 Foot Titan, which I think is a great name.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It was funny the way we came up with it, too.
How'd you come up with it, then?
Well, my guitar player, Skid Marks, kept coming up with names that were, like, really serious and everything, and so not taking myself or anything else at the time too seriously, I just kept coming up with counter names to his band names, which were just ridiculous and joke-worthy, and then finally it came around to 2 Foot Titan, because it sounded like a midget titan that's fierce and dangerous. And he's like, well, actually, I kind of like that one. And so
what were some of the names that he was coming up with?
There was 2-ton shoes, which were like, it sounded like, I don't really know what the metaphor behind it was, but I guess he just felt like, oh, it's just, you've got all this baggage and, there's a lot on your, you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders or something really serious, and I didn't want a band name to sound full of itself or anything.
Right.
Not that that's what he was, his goal was or anything. He wanted to come up with something that incited maybe a little bit of thought. So I guess we all agreed on something that was both stupid and still kind of funny and makes you think a little bit.
How important is a name for a band, do you think?
Oh, it's really important, but anymore, it's hard to come up with something that everybody can agree on. I was reading this article where Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age was talking about trying to come up with a name for what eventually became called Them Crooked Vultures, and how there's just so many bands out there, past and present, who've taken up these awesome names, and it's kind of like trying to name a horse that's going to be in a race.
Yeah.
So they wound up, choosing Them Crooked Vultures because of how ridiculous and surely untaken it must have been.
Yeah, there's certain words that just have never gone together, and a lot of those words are going to be good band names. Absolutely. Like Chocolate Jesus.
That's awesome. That's a great band name.
Right, exactly.
I heard this other one called Black Jesus Vomit.
Yeah. You just got to take things that don't normally go together and that
right.
works. And you guys' name is fantastic. What kind of music do you guys play?
I call it hard rock, but every time you ask a different member of the band what our music sounds like, you get a different answer. But really, if you listen to it, I think everybody can agree it's hard rock.
What's the inspirational? You must have your tags back to other bands and other bandmates. Where do you guys draw inspiration from?
Well, I grew up, getting into music in the early 90s and listening to bands like Pearl Jam or Alice in Chains or Aerosmith. A lot of the music that really kind of resonated with me was music that was not necessarily about partying all night long and or rock and roll or whatever, but it was things that touched on emotions and feelings a little bit more maybe. Alice in Chains and kind of darker music like Nine Inch Nails or Tool was really my favorite kind of thing for a very long time until I started branching out, I suppose. And I met a bunch of guys who listened to a lot of the same music. I met my drummer Jancy backstage at Seven Dust. So we got to meet the band and talk about music. And eventually we had a woodshop class together in high school. And we're like, well...
Is it an actual woodshop or is it some kind of...
it was an actual woodshop class.
It wasn't like some kind of we had the woodshop.
We had this drunken teacher that everybody knew that he kept a little a little bottle of whiskey in his top drawer.
Okay.
And we would all just joke about it. And he would show up, slurring his speech and everything, but nobody really gave a shit because he let us do what we wanted as long as we didn't, take the skin off our hands on a planer or something.
Right. Run a thumb through a bandsaw or whatever.
So me and Jancy are just whittling up some cabriole legs, and we're like, fuck it, let's just start a band. I know a couple of guys, and so
nice.
I was like 18 at the time, and we just started up a band, and we didn't know what to call that for a little while, and then we settled on what I think now is kind of a retarded name, but it was what it was. We called it Cinder, burning, but not quite quenched.
Right.
Or something serious, which is why later, I'm done with serious names.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can always take. I was trying to think of some names that go together. And you take cinder and put it next to something else that does not go together, like cinder florist.
Cinder florist,
something.
Cinder wings.
Cinder wings. Yes, I like it. Right. Or like cinder champion. What the hell does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah, it's whatever you want it to mean, man.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things we do quite often here on the Break It Down show is we build the Mount Rushmore of something, the top four. And what 4 does is 4 makes it hard. Like if I say the top 4 bassists, oh, God, that gets tough really fast. The top 4 songwriters, the top 4, it gets really crowded at the top, and then guys start elbowing, and all of a sudden you realize, like, as great as top 4 frontmen ever, as great as Jim Morrison is, he just doesn't hang, no matter what. So if I was to ask you, what are the top 4, what are your Mount Rushmore of frontmen, what would you say?
Oh, we were talking about this the other night. So all right, I'll reserve my number 1 for last then, I guess.
Okay.
So that'll make it even tougher.
Well, they're all number 1s. They all go up. They're all 4.
Okay,
so it's
there's
just 4.
Okay,
and that's
great.
it. Like there's not 5. There's 4.
Okay, so how about for starters, Lane Staley? I took a lot of inspiration from that guy. I became obsessed with him throughout the '90s, and so Lane Staley in one of those slots for sure. The next one would probably be Robert Plant.
Okay.
Because,
I think you had me at Robert Plant.
Yeah. Just when I was, about to get sick of all of the bands that I would throw on repeat on my Discman, I found this CD that one of my brothers must have left somewhere. It was like in a pile of junk. And I'm like, oh, Led Zeppelin. Well, I haven't listened to a full Led Zeppelin album before. Throw it in. Totally blew my mind.
Down. You're like,
yeah.
I got hooked.
And seeing Robert Plant just strutting his shit and just being a metal god, that was something, that makes him undeniable. Mm-hmm. So Robert Plant for the second one. For the third one, that's I'm going to maybe move away from rock and try to think of something a little bit broader maybe, or just different. How about Michael Jackson?
Okay.
Is
he a frontman or is he a solo act?
I guess it depends. Like if you're talking about the Jackson 5, then
he's a frontman.
He was like the front man, but also one of the brothers and everything. Yeah. But he eventually became sort of a solo act. I think that it's fair to put him in there just because of everything that he could do, and how some front men are just so big, so tall that they just overshadow whoever else is in their band at the time, through oftentimes no fault of the other guys or anything. It's just that they're with somebody who's undeniable as a
usually
star power.
Someone like Michael Jackson, or let's say James Brown, they already know that they're the alpha male on that stage, and so they hire people that are bravos. They're like, you guys are great. You're a world class musician. You know how to stay out of my way. You know how to build the house so I can party. And then everybody in the whole room gets the benefit of because not everybody can be, Led Zeppelin. I mean, when you talk about rock gods, Robert Plant clearly, but Jimmy Page also is a rock god. I mean, when it comes to guitar players, and then Bonham, is, and that's not taking anything away from John Paul Jones, but when you think of the level of those guys, there aren't many bands that are that heavy hitting across the top. Usually one person has to stand out. That's the norm. So Michael Jackson.
Yes. My last one has got to be Freddie Mercury. everything from the corny things that that Queen did with their music to the serious emotional things they did. They went all over the spectrum, and they made songs that would make you laugh and songs that literally would make an entire room erupt in song, just singing along to it. They're one of those bands that it doesn't matter how bigoted of a person you are or how accepting you are. Everybody knows about Queen. Everybody loves Freddie Mercury.
Right.
He was undeniable. Where he came from too, I believe he was Iranian, and he just came from nothing, from this boarding school where he just hated everything, hated life, and he kind of changed as an individual and made his way to, I think it was England. He met the guys and they started making music, and it was incredible. It was like he came out of nowhere and was just meant for that kind of thing to happen. There's nobody else who can fill the shoes of Freddie Mercury, which is, they tried.
Yeah, Freddie Mercury is one of a kind, and for sure. I mean, and it's your list, so you get to have your four guys. So not me. I'm not going to attack it, but I'm going to ask you some questions on how you qualify things, because this is what the conversation's about. Like, okay, you've got your guys, and it's pretty undeniable. Those are four incredible frontmen. So how long does it take for a frontman, in your mind, to be eligible for this honor, to be, chiseled and rock forever? The question I would put into this is did Lane Staley, did he do enough?
Compared to somebody like Robert Plant or Freddie Mercury or Michael Jackson, no, he wasn't given enough time to. But that was kind of the curse of those grunge bands too, is they all fell apart when something that they couldn't quite controlled them. That was the tragedy of it, really. It could have been something amazing. We're lucky that, we got to have people like Chris Cornell for as long as we did.
Sure, yeah.
And it's weird that all of them seem to be cut off in their prime. Even Chris Cornell, I think that guy had tons of albums left to make.
Oh, for sure.
But, it was, damn you depression, damn you
drug
abuse.
Taking
another one from us.
Right. And maybe we got more out of him than we were supposed to because of the era he grew up in. It seems like rock stars have sort of figured out how to burn bright and not just burn out at 27 or 31 years old. So
that being said, I guess the reason why I would still group Lane Staley in with them is because of more of a sentimental thing for me, because I grew up listening to that, and listening to a guy like Lane, I identified with him more than any of those other three names I mentioned, because I saw myself in him. He seemed at times to be, a person who had battled with insecurity and his own demons. His dad left him, and not that my dad left me or anything, but I know a lot of people who had to go through the same shit he did.
Sure. And
people who were geniuses, but they had the stupidest Achilles heel. They had a problem with drugs or, some sort of a relationship issue even. And the things he would sing about were something that he said, whatever you think the song is about, that's what it's about. And which is what I was kind of joking about earlier. But really, when you listen to Alice in Chains, it's very clear that they're talking about dark feelings and stuff that wasn't being sung about at the time. And so he made music very achievable to me. It seemed so achievable, and not in an easy way, like, some people can just walk into a job and they're bumbling idiots and they can do it anyways. It wasn't the case with him. He seemed like a regular Joe to me who became more than that, and his life was cut short. And I've never disliked a single album from Alice in Chains, and they were just so powerful to me, and just the sound of it and everything. I've never heard anything like it before or since.
When you look at someone who's a lead man for a short amount of time, they also get to leave, not necessarily on top in Lane's case, but you get to leave without having to figure out the next act in your life. It's Paul McCartney's done it. Been in different bands, been a solo artist, and he still can tour and still puts viable new music out there that people want to hear. Other people, it's just like you're I love David Lee Roth, but he's been a one-trick pony for 40 years now, and as incredible of a frontman as he is, as much as I love him, I can't put him, and I wouldn't, like, if you would have said David Lee Roth, I'd be like, that's awesome, because he deserves to be up there. But also, it's like how he didn't evolve, really. Yeah, he went off and did his own solo thing and did the songs that no one else wanted to do in Van Halen, but,
Right.
He did that campy karate dude, and now he's not able to do any of that. His body and his voice don't hold up to those things. Is there an expiration date on frontmen?
Ooh, not all of them.
For
I
sure.
could name. I saw Ozzy Osbourne something like 10 years ago.
Right.
About that, I think at that point he had to be pushing 60. And he would come out there and, he may be old, and people were making jokes about Ozzy not being up on stage long before I ever saw him, but he could handle it. And he put on a great show, and he had tons of energy. And even though he's the kind of guy that you sometimes can't understand what the hell he's saying when he's speaking to you one-on-one,
Right.
when he's on stage and he's stretching out the words and he's yelling everything, he's loud and clear. But is there an expiration date for frontmen? Sometimes. I mean, I think as much as this hurts me to say, Robert Plant can't really, when they reunited for a little bit with John Bonham's son, I think it was Jason Bonham.
Right.
I thought, oh man, this is it. We're going to get another Zeppelin album or something. This is as close as it gets to the original Zeppelin lineup.
Right.
And if everything falls into place, we just might see some sparks and we might get an album out of it. But turned out not to be the case. But when you actually listen to them playing, you can tell that Robert Plant just can't hit those notes anymore,
Sure.
whether he can or just doesn't, or can't or doesn't want to.
Yeah. Well, without a doubt, he can't do that every night on the road. Maybe he's got a couple of those notes, and maybe it's not reliable that he gets there. So
Yeah.
that would make me not want to. I mean, I'm sure Steve Perry's in the same boat where he had the chance to sing. We all wanted to see it at the Hall of Fame induction thing, but it wasn't going to happen because Steve Perry, just like an elite baseball player is like, I could still play baseball all right, but I can't play where you guys all saw me, and that's where I want to be. So as much as it hurts me, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's got to be tough to decide when you're in that position. Well, do I risk kind of crashing out there hard a little bit, or
Right.
do I just try to save a little bit of the grace that's left over after all these years, and just step down a little bit.
Right.
But to what then? There's all these new artists that come out now, and it's a lot harder, I think, to really hold bands of today up to scrutiny against the bands of old who were pushing boundaries and everything. There's so many more bands now, and there's not that X factor, that special element to bands as often anymore, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is very tough. It appears, at least from my mind, there appears to have been a great era of rock and roll music, and that time is closed. There's still a lot of wonderful new music, but it's a different era. So this era, I think, when you could start a band and sell 10 million albums, and let's understand, that's impossible to do. But especially now, but 25 years ago, that could happen. So you look at like what was the last, this is a question for you. What was the last big band in the door where like, okay, after the White Stripes, we're shutting this down and there will never be another monster band again, and if there is, it's, you've got a solo card pass to come in, but after the White Stripes, who came along? Like the Killers, do they fill that bill? Maybe, and it's really like you're talking when and you look at the Killers, and let's say this up front, I love the Killers. I love what they do. They're fantastic. But when you put the Killers up against Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, there's no contest. That they aren't the same band. If you put the White Stripes up against the Killers, I still think that White Stripes are significantly more impactful, sold more albums, and everything else. What do you think about that?
If we set that mark at when the White Stripes emerged, that's makes it really hard, because I would say a little before that there were a lot of really promising bands coming out. Queens of the Stone Age is one of them, and when I finally did find out about them, they'd already been around for about a decade.
Yeah.
And they absolutely blew my mind. There was just this huge symphony of harmonies and ghostly melodies and really awesome guitar solos and guitar tones. And it really excites me to hear that. But now, the other tricky thing about saying, well, who's going to be the next big one is, they're in the proving ground right now. So we can't really say until the king is, made his way to the top of the mountain, so to speak. But there's bands like Black Keys. They have that, kind of dirty rock sound, and I think that a lot of the bands that are rock and roll, and not just kind of a little bit of everything, like Maroon 5, you could say, well, they're trying everything. They're doing whatever they can to come up with a hit. But the Black Keys, they come up with things that are still very much instrument based, and there's a real loose feel to it, and it's cool. It has a good sound. It makes you want to move, makes you want to dance. The Alabama Shakes are another band that I enjoy, and I also enjoy them aside from their musical abilities because of their ability with their singer to kind of step outside of that idea of what you must be as a singer, that you must be extremely attractive and fit and be advertisable, like sellable. They're not that, but their music is very much that.
But can you put the Black Keys, Black Ties, even in with the Black Crowes? I mean, the Black Crowes, I think, win that fight every day of the week. And again, all respect to these newer bands, it's just you can't, it doesn't appear to be, we don't consume bands the same way anymore.
No.
If Def Leppard showed up, they would fuck up any of these bands in terms of success and impact. The Lumineers, great. Here are the Lumineers. Oh, here comes Bon Jovi.
Right.
We're going to sell 20 million albums after our awesome album. It's just it's a different time. And you're in an emerging band right now. Do you look and go, we have a Bon Jovi New Jersey in us, and it's going to not ever sell 20 million albums?
Yeah, and I'm okay with that, if that ends up being the case. For me, it's more of a personal gain than anything, because I wanted to be a part of it, no matter how big or small things became.
Yeah.
And being able to make your own music and stand by it or look back on it, as years move on, is always going to be there for me. And I'm a student of music. I enjoy it. Like I was a listener before I was a player.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I am still. I'm just enjoying it, and I'm privileged that I can make an album, and it's not like it was back in the day.
Yeah.
Where you had limited tools to make a decent album. Now you can do it comfort of your own home practically.
Yeah, is that a good thing?
For the old days of music, no. But those days are gone.
Right.
And the best thing I think to do is keep listening to music that gives you that feeling. And another thing too is one of the really awesome things about great bands like Pink Floyd or Def Leppard or Led Zeppelin or Aerosmith is they would often have an album that you're supposed to listen to it all the way through.
Right.
Because it's a theme or it's telling a story.
Sure.
And we don't really get a lot of that now because of the way people pick songs online. So there's nothing you can do as an artist yourself, I think, but just make your music and put it out there, and people are going to accept bits of it and reject other bits of it. And it's probably going to be the case a few times that somebody's going to want to listen to your album all the way through and get that journey out of it. But I don't really think that's the game for most people anymore, because people want to create their playlist, for when they hit the gym or go for a jog or they've got a party.
Yeah. If you can make an album in the comfort of your own home, again, does that benefit us? You take someone like Michael Hutchence from INXS and Andrew Ferris, who were like really the songwriting team in that band. Andrew Ferris could come up with hooks like crazy, and that's what made that part of the band work. But then that was where it stopped. And then you had to get into the guy that was going to find the words, and just so happened to be like this sexual machine when he's on stage and drove everybody crazy. You can't find that in the comfort of your own home. How do you find that connection? I mean, look, McCartney and Lennon had to write songs together, and they were better for it. Yes, some songs are one, and some songs, but those songs had to go through a process. Can you do that? Can you hold yourself to a high enough standard in the comfort of your own home?
No, and that's where playing live comes in, and also making time with your band to jam and get a good vibe going. As cliche and bullshit as that sounds, it's really important to be able to have a good mix and a good relationship with your bandmates. In my case, there's 4 of us, and I've said many times that it's like a 4-way relationship where you have to take into account what everybody's got going on in their own personal life and how they're doing. But where it lucks out for us is we're all such good friends, and we don't give a fuck about looking stupid or sounding like shit on stage because we've practiced and because we trust each other. And you know what you were saying about Michael Hutchinson and how he, or you know, guys like him or Robert Plant, and how they have that X factor, that special element, which is what they bring forth. Or you know, Rage Against the Machine had it with the ferocious sound of Zach De La Rocha's vocals are just the driving punch behind all of that music. Without it, you would still have the genius of Tom Morello's guitar work the sick ass beats of their bass and drum section.
Right.
But Zach De La Rocha is the cherry on that cake. And as a band coming from a small town, when you're trying to be noticed rather than just people who can put a song together and play it live, you want to be noticed. But you also have to have your own formula. And I think the best way to find it is to play live shows as much as you can and take risks and be daring and to a certain extent just don't give a shit about it.
Yeah.
And have fun.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be young for a little while, and pretty soon you're not going to be able to, you know, throw your body out into a crowd or swing off of a ballast or something like that, or karate kick somebody into the, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to do all of those moves that Diamond Dave and his karate kicks and his flips and the swords and shit. How we were saying, you know, he's getting older now. He can't quite do that anymore. But that was an element of Van Halen that made them just really awesome.
Right.
They just looked like they could party forever, and they were smiling playing it. Eddie Van Halen had that huge fucking grin on his face while he's shredding. And they just look like they're having a good time. And you know, they inspired bands later to do the same thing or kind of follow that vein even. Jerry Cantrell, the guitar player from Alice in Chains, is a huge Eddie Van Halen fan.
I wanted to take a second out of the show and talk to you guys about our sponsor, WeFixYourScript.com. What I love about these guys is they're encouraging you, just like John, Mark, and I, to create something. If you think screenwriting is your thing, or if you've got a script that you're kind of stuck on, this is what you do. You don't got to buy anything. Just give these guys a call. Schedule a 15-minute consultation for free. It's WeFixYourScript.com. I highly encourage you guys to support these guys. Reach out to us. Reach out to them. Reach out to WeFixYourScript.com.
Part of his dream came true when they got to tour together, and he became good friends with Eddie, and Eddie actually gave him a bunch of their touring equipment.
Right.
You know, just helped him out huge there. And
yeah.
I love stories like that. And
yeah, there are great stories. So Jerry kind of brings us full circle. Jerry had Lane, and Lane had Jerry. And without the two of those guys, they could be, well, we see where, Jerry is now, and this is not a knock on Jerry, but when you have that magic of the two dudes coming together where there's this symbiotic thing where I have hooks, you have words, and that it thing, let's do this. In excess, same thing. We made a show about trying to find a guy who could do these songs, but it's just not that transformative. Michael Hutchence had that power where you weren't in the Staples Center. You were in the mind of Michael Hutchence, and he had you. And that's got to be tough for a guy like Jerry, who's world class in everything he does and absolutely can write songs. But when you have that jet fuel to perform your song with, it's such an incredible thing. Yeah. Bringing us back over to the other side of this, as a record label goes, because you can make your own record, but someone's got to put it out there. When they go to put it out there and they see jet fuel and they sing a good songwriter, Jerry, we're going to have you write a song for Lane, and Lane's going to go off on his own and be a solo performer, because this is what I can sell. I can't sell this grunge band. Do you think we'll get past this era where we're trying to sort out like what we can sell? Because we don't know what we can sell. Hardly anybody, Taylor Swift, and the list is getting really short now, can sell albums reliably. Beyonce can sell albums reliably. Maybe Pink one more time. That's it, though. That's the list is short. So, and those are all solo performers. Mm-hmm. So is there a new golden era of bands out there? Will we get tired of trap and then get tired of solo performers and things that are done in the garage or in Pro Tools, and we get these people that I'm waiting for the music defining moment, and that is really unfair to guys like Bruno Mars, who are absolutely incredible at everything they do on stage. I mean, he's a monster of a player, he's a singer, performer, he has it without a doubt. But it just seems like we had more, and it was more accessible because Columbia, Sony, all these different labels could sell these things. What do you think?
Well, yeah, if you're asking me, there's a lot of similarities between people like Bruno Mars or Pink and Beyonce, and it's not just that they're solo artists, but some of them, and not all of them obviously, but some of them follow this formula that it seems a lot of bands, or not bands, but solo performers or groups or bands, whatever, they also follow them. There's a process that they haven't broken away from because it's sold in the past, and it seems now that that is getting sales for sure, but it's not from the people that were buying albums like Led Zeppelin 3 or people that were buying Dark Side of the Moon. Those were people who, it seems to me, weren't just asking mommy and daddy for, $10 to go out and get a record. They had their own path that they were kind of seeking out in music, and they had their tastes, and they had a kind of music in mind that they wanted to hear. But it seems like, you can switch out a lot of songs from some of these solo artists now and not for really sure know the difference. And that is the era that I think we're in right now, is where the consumer is not educated on music at all, but they are seeing these huge flashing neon signs with somebody like Beyonce or somebody like Pink.
And of course, we're saying Beyonce and Pink, these are incredible people. I keep caveating it because I don't want this to be like an angry old man session.
Yeah,
back in my day, they played a thing called the guitar.
Right.
So I'm trying to define these things because it does matter. I was going to ask you too. We're upstairs. We were watching the documentary about Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Yeah.
And those guys got in cars that couldn't go across the nation and started out on a band. Is there a benefit that we don't get today from a band saying, yes, all the way from Florida to Hollywood with a handful of dollars in our pockets, we're burning the ships. This is what we're doing, and we're going to make it. Like this, do we? And then I'm going to couple that with Phil Decker, guy from where I grew up, was in one of those bands like Quiet Riot, Rat, but they were like 2 cuts below in terms of success, which doesn't mean they weren't successful. They went to Japan and toured heavily there and made money, but they were a Sunset Strip band in the 80s, and out of that comes, gosh, Guns N' Roses and all kinds of other bands. So not everybody's going to make it. But when Phil was there, he's like, we got there. And I think the number was 2,500 other bands were in LA at that time trying to get a deal, trying to get stage time and everything else. So when you unplug your life in Missoula, Montana and say, we're driving 1,500 miles down to LA and we're doing this, there's an investment there.
Oh,
you
yes.
know? And how many people in your family go, you're fucking crazy? You know, and you're like,
Probably
I'm selling
most
everything.
of them.
Yeah, right. And you're going to sell everything you own because there's no point in keeping this old TV and this old thing. It's all going to go because you're going down there. That's not required anymore.
Not exactly. And, sadly, not all of those big risks that are taken are rewarded. You don't hear about those people because nobody cares about the losers that did everything they could, but just didn't show up on the right bus stop once they hit LA, or didn't go to the right club or something, or they didn't play the right note that one night when they were rocking out in front of all these people and there were scouts around,
or they did the set of their life and they were awesome, and then here comes Guns N' Roses, and they take you at your best and they chop your head off and you're like, that's my head on the floor. Oh shit! But let's not call those people losers because they go on to other things. Yes,
no, they're not losers, but that's
but they don't win at the game of being the biggest band in the world.
Yeah, and one might feel like you could call them that, but no, these are people who took a risk, took a big chance, and that doesn't make you a loser.
Yeah, and they also
but some
go on
people might feel that way. Is all I'm saying. Speaking from the perspective of a person who really doesn't get what it's like to put your entire life on hold, as well as maybe other people's. Not some of those people probably had kids or family at home, and they were just like gonna go out and try to make this thing work out.
Yeah, and some of them are in their 50s still trying to do it, and they're still wearing spandex and stuff. You know, so it definitely happens. But I think there is something to be said for taking that risk and diving all the way in, and showing up. Because when I'm trying to sell something, you came all the way across the country? All right, I'm going to pay attention to this because that's harder than some kid from Pasadena driving 30 minutes over to see me. This is all right. Yeah, you guys made this step partly because you're crazy and I need crazy, but also because you think you're good enough, because that's where the major leagues are. I want to go back and ask you about, there's a Linkin Park picture here. You had mentioned Rage Against the Machine. One of the things that strikes me about these 2 groups in particular is where their songwriting took them and what they were selling. Obviously, Rage Against the Machine is incredible. They have the musical genius behind it. They have that truly, like Zach's singing and performing and words are just inflamed. It's huge. But you can't take that and go put a symphony behind it and still sell me how angry you are and how angry at the machine you are when the machine has paid you a lot of money. At some point it's like, all right, come on, listen. Yeah. And same thing with Linkin Park. Like, I get that you're upset with your mom and you feel sad about being awkward, but at some point you have to evolve as an artist, even if that's your own personal struggle. And obviously Chester had that struggle his whole life. But at some point, it's hard to sell that in a band. How do you, as a songwriter, how do you reconcile with that where, you've got to evolve? You can't, Adam Sandler can't keep making goofy guy movies all the time, like the idiot child adult movie, thing. It just doesn't work. And it shouldn't drive your art. But how do you transition into something else? How do you, someone who's trying to figure out and write songs, as your life evolves, how do you continue to find the voice?
Think about that quite a bit, actually. And in my 20s, I tried a lot to just throw myself into as many positions as I possibly could to gain experience, and not always making the best decisions either. But that was a part of the growth and learning process. And, the more trouble I would get into, the more I would find a muse for something. And it was probably a good idea to throw myself into bad situations every now and then, as long as I could, work my way out of them. And if I can work my way out of a problem, I feel that I have something to say about problems such as those too, whether it's like what these other artists had to deal with, which was addiction or mental illness or some kind of mental anguish even. Everybody who really, it seems everybody who has anything to say at all has been through a lot. You take guys like Robin Williams, one of the funniest people I can think of, who, from accounts I hear, was just living such a depressed and sad and at times lonely existence that it's hard to believe that they were the same person. The guy that you saw playing Peter Pan in Hook also had some amazingly horrible demons and problems with depression that you didn't know about unless you really loved Robin Williams enough to follow him and see what's going on. And it's tragic that eventually consumed him. But that's what happens to a lot of those people too, it seems. If you're so full of all of these feelings and these urges and problems and all of this drive, you're like you burn out quick, but you do spectacular things before that happens. And as far as I know, I only get one shot at life, and so I have no reason personally to think any different. And I would be much more partial to living fast and burning out than stretching things out and maybe not achieving what I wish I could have achieved. I could have not pursued music, and I could have just decided to make cabrio legs after taking a woodshop class.
Yeah, or carving a horse for the carousel downtown.
Yeah,
Are you limited by where you're from and where your life is?
It depends on what you want to get out of your music. Yes, if you live in the town that I live in and you want to be the next Guns N' Roses or you want to be the next Metallica, you're starting off in the wrong place probably. And not because this town is going to hold you back from it, but because there's people that you need to meet. There's things that you need to do.
Right.
And you can't do that here.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. How do you meet that person that's going to take your musical game up a notch or three? And some of these people just have this knowledge. I remember hearing the story of Steven Tyler when Aerosmith was first starting out, and he's like, no. The set starts with this. We start off with this strong song. They'll end with that song, and then you go into a 3-song medley. And like, it's like, how did you know this formula? Like, you're as old as us, but he had the exposure and was able to extract the lesson out. So he knew that, you start off hard, you go 3-song medley, get the crowd going, and then you say hello. He just had these things. And you're right. If that lesson isn't available here in Missoula, you've got to go somewhere else. So how does someone from an emerging band go? Because for you, somewhere else could be Tacoma, and you'd still be in the same place. You're just 3 hours to the west, Yeah. Where do you go?
Well, for starters, you start off paying your dues, playing small clubs. But as soon as you get an opportunity, you step it up, and you play bigger shows. You go out of the state that you're in, and you play outside of Montana. There's a lot of hurdles that bands around here especially have to deal with, which is, family and kids. It's hard nowadays to inspire somebody to leave home for a month or more,
Right,
to, go out and play music. And it's hard to keep people on your side, in your camp, while you're gone doing that. So you have to work extra hard basically to make these things happen. If you want to go and you want to play in LA, you're going to need a rig. You're going to need some cash set aside, cash that you're going to end up spending all of and probably a little bit more while you're out there.
Right.
And you need a game plan, plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D.
Do you know the story of Pomplamoose, the band? Do you know them at all?
No.
Jack Conti and his wife. So his wife, Natalie Dunn, has been on our show, and her husband, Jack, and they're a wonderful band. We'll look at some videos in a little bit, and you're going to see like how they had figured a lot of the game out in terms of the modern band approach. And so, okay, we're going to go on the road. And they went on the road, and they wrote a blog about it. Jack did. And he's like, look, this is what it means to go on the road. You go out, you put all this money on your credit card, and a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars. And then you come back and you lose a little bit of money overall. Like you exposed your audience. Yes, you sold some albums and T-shirts. But when we go to count all the beans and everything, you can't justify going back out because there's not enough money in it, Can you quantify the lessons learned into something? Okay, maybe, but now you're digging into a bank account that you don't control the access to. So the story for Pomplamoose gets better, though. They start making these clever videos on YouTube, and like I said, we'll watch them, and you'll get it right away. You'll be like, oh, man, yeah, you'll end up watching them all night long is what happens to everybody. Super clever, super catchy, and they did some covers. Your mom told me you're not big on covers, and so maybe this will tie in. They did covers, and one of them they did, and completely different, like a re-instrumentation of these songs. They did All the Pretty Ladies. And the year that Beyonce didn't win, Kanye grabs the mic from Taylor Swift. All the Pretty Ladies should be Song of the Year. It was way better. All that stuff, right? That made everybody in the world go to the internet.
Best music video of all time.
Right, exactly. So everybody goes to YouTube and looks at All the Pretty Ladies, and guess which one's the next one in the queue? It's the Pomplamoose version because it's a cover of it. And that moment changed their lives. They were making a little bit of money and, doing the emerging band thing, but that cracked it. And because they had the catalog all set up, people were like, what is this? Who are these two people? I can't get enough of them. And that changed how they live the rest of their lives because of that moment. So one thing we know from doing this show is that we don't control when our moment happens. You have to create stuff so that at some point someone goes, that, and they pick it, and then the ride starts. What are your thoughts on something like that? Like when I tell you, it took a cover of a song, a lot of talent, a lot of things, but there's so many bands that don't have the Pomplamoose story. They end up having to go become drug salespeople, not, I mean like legitimate drugs, not like
like
drug
in the
dealers.
streets.
Yeah, not drug. But they have to go do another life.
Well, some of them do.
yeah, some of them do. You're right. But what do you think about that? Like, because you keep talking about getting on the road, and then I keep thinking, man, you know what? That's still, and there's no guaranteed way. But
it's like a big expensive trip that you've been wanting to take for a long time, and when we all go out on trips, we don't expect to go somewhere and then hit it big and then come back with extra. You expect to lose that money, and you expect to gain life experience and good times from it. Mostly, and that's what I want out of music anyways, is just a good time. I don't need to be famous, although let me tell you right now, that would be awesome, and all the money that comes along with it, of course, too. First and foremost, I want to, drive around in a Ferrari. I want a private jet and all that, but I don't feel like it's owed to me, and I feel like I can still get the most out of being a musician just from doing what we do now. It doesn't mean that I'm satisfied at this situation now. We're always, every year, stepping it up. We're currently trying to finish a second album and go from there and make new merchandise. There's a lot that's happened just over this summer. We played 2 of the biggest shows we've ever played, and had a great time doing it, and we got exposure to other people, and we got to give our albums out and, spread that a little further and get people who otherwise wouldn't hear about us to hear about us. And, that's why we started our YouTube channel. That's why we've been doing all of this, because we do care about it. We are poor as dirt, and we, when you're poor as dirt and you still want to get that stuff out of there, you just have to work extra hard. You have to take some time out of your life and put it to it.
Tell us the YouTube channel so we can make sure we all go to it too.
The best way to find it is to type in 2 Foot Titan, and there are videos that come up over it. You can find our album actually on YouTube currently, and if you go to the 2 Foot Titan site, I believe it 2 Foot Talk. That's our podcast that we started for a little while, but we stopped making those while we were trying to finish up the album and also start touring. We're eventually going to get that up and going too, because we were using it not just for ourselves, but for our friends who are also playing shows around here. And if you're interested, you can go and look us up on YouTube right now, or Spotify even. 2 Foot Titan, spelled out TWOFOOTTITAN. Check us out. It's not for everybody, but I think it's for most of you.
Nice. I like it. Let me ask you this. And this is a hard question, so we don't have to keep it. We can kick it out. But you guys are at that age where lives are emerging in addition to your band. So there's, the girlfriend is like, hey, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I'm pregnant. And these things are going to happen, and they continue to happen at a greater pace. And life is going to keep adding distractors in. Where are you guys at? Do you feel like your core can get to the finish line together, whatever that finish line is?
Yes, I do. See, it's all kind of, all of that has already pretty much happened. The only guys in our group that don't have kids already are just me and Jancy, my drummer, and we're just as much in it as we were when we were like 18. But the difference now is Jancy's got a girlfriend. I've got college. I don't really see too much difference in that and what other bands have had to deal with. Bands like Rage Against the Machine, they were enrolled in college themselves when they were starting to get pop. Even a band called Third Eye Blind, which I was really into as a kid, it emerged from college. All those guys had met up. Their guitar player, I believe, was from Berkeley. Might have been their bassist, but this is just life, and you should expect it to happen. And when it does happen, don't let it bog you down, because life is going to get even more complex. It's never going to be as simple as when you were crapping your diapers.
Yeah, right? Isn't that funny? We had Bryce Vine on the show, and he's just a fantastic young artist. And I say young, I mean, he's basically your age too. But he has put the formula together in a modern way, and I just love what he does. Also inspired by Third Eye Blind. And you wouldn't, if you look at his music and his appearance, he would say, like, you'd be surprised to hear that Third Eye Blind is my band, but that's his band.
Right.
And it's funny when we do these shows, and by the time this one goes up, we'll be past 200 episodes published, right? And that's a lot of work. But there's this, pretty much every show has a thread that ties into the whole river of shows that we have. And it's just incredible to sit across from my cousin, sit across from Dexter from The Offspring, and have you guys talk about things and like, well, these things all fit together. These things jive, Like he's added things into his life because he needed more to do, So life doesn't always have to overwhelm us, and sometimes you wait 10 years to have the kid, and sometimes you never have the kid. Sometimes you just, like this guy I'm thinking of, Dave, who just keeps pursuing the rock and roll dream into his 50s,
Yeah.
He can't, as much as we want to make a joke about him, he can't escape who he is, and a lot of us never find who we are and find our thing. He doesn't mind handing out flyers and encouraging people to come to his show because that's what he calls living.
And that ain't a bad living.
Yeah.
For me, life is about finding fulfillment and learning to enjoy it with others. You don't need to be famous or rich to obtain that, although having a boat's nice, having a few houses is nice.
Yeah. But you can have a boat.
Yeah.
Anybody can have a boat if that's what their dream is. So,
Right.
hey, I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got to come out to LA and do some with me and sit in on some shows.
Absolutely must.
I love that.